Forward. Halt. Left. 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 Right. Your left. 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 Right. Bound on. Bound on.
Arkansas boy with a lifelong plan took the oath like his old man, then turned around proud and shook his hand. L.A. kid stood right behind, took a deep breath and signed on the line, while tears streamed from his mama's eyes. They hopped right up on that Greyhound bus, swapping stories. They laughed and cussed, and they talked about the girls that they loved. They made a pact, shined up their boots, got the call before it hit the news. No clue what they were about to do. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern. Welcome to the Finish This Fight Hour. My name is Glenn Baker. I'm your host. We've got a pretty special show today, and I want you to understand this. The greatest power on earth today is not the military or money, y'all. It is control of information. And you've noticed that. I mean, you've got to notice that unless you're living underneath a log. Right now, big tech decides what you're allowed to see, what you're allowed to say, and even try to control what you're allowed to think. It's crazy. And the same digital authoritarian model that's used by the Chinese Communist Party it's being quietly exported to the rest of the world, y'all. This is something, I've said this for years. In fact, when I released the song, Finish This Fight, there's a line in that song that says there's a war going on that we cannot see. And it's happening all around us. Well, it's happening today through digital authoritarian model that's Chinese Communist founded. Today, I'm joined by Janice Trey. Now, she's the board chair for the Epoch Times and NTD TV. And y'all see me. I've been interviewed on that NTD many times. And she's here to expose how the system works, how big tech sponsorship is shaping reality, why secure platforms like SafeMeet matter, and why the most American president that we've ever had should tell Xi to tear down China's digital firewall, y'all. This is not about politics. I don't care. Left, right, center, doesn't matter. This is about whether free people stay free. And y'all need to understand, if you're just waking up or if you've been awake for a while, you need to realize this country and this world doesn't have the freedom that I fought for, that I thought we had. And we need to stay aware. We need to be willing to fight for it. And it starts right now. Let me introduce to you my guest today, Janice Trey. Hi, Janice. How are you?
Doing great, Glenn. Thank you for having me on your show.
Well, you're welcome to be on the show. Now, Janice, we've got a little bit of a different couple of personalities here. I'm a country boy redneck from Oklahoma. I'm a former combat veteran. I sing country music, and I'm just mad about everything that's happening in this country. Janice, you've got a different background. You came from communist China, but you also endured some things in communist China. Can we talk a little bit about your background before we go into what you're working on right now?
Sure. I'm so glad I come to the land of freedom in the United States of America in 1989. But let me give you a little bit back about my story, why I came to the United States as a teenager, not knowing anybody in this country. I was born and raised during the Cultural Revolutions in a forced labor camp simply because my parents were engineers. So we were sent to a very remote part of China. I was a child laborer, first grade, second grade, third grade, growing sugar cane for the school and pick up crops drop on the field because they use hand tools during harvest seasons. And every day, if I could not fill up a full bag of crops in a plastic bag, I would not be allowed to return to school the next day. And the school was located 1.5 hours by walking through cemetery, crop fields, climb the hill. The school was on the other side of the hill. When I carried fertilizers almost heavier than myself to the top of the hill to grow the sugar cane. And in a forced labor camp, you could not imagine. There was only one television set for the entire camp, and there were only 2 opportunities I ever saw the TV in labor camp was Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai's funeral. So my understanding of television was funeral, and everybody must stand in front and wear something black until I had the chance to get to Hong Kong, because my father, as an engineer, he knows Einstein believes in God, but he had no chance of learning Christianity in mainland China. So he sent me to Hong Kong, to where my grandfather was. My grandfather was a successful banker. He owned his own bank. My mom, rode with chauffeur, took her to school during her childhood. But because communism came to China, they robbed my grandfather's bank and robbed his antique collection, his art painting collection. So he fled to Hong Kong and restarted as a guard in a factory, so he could live and work 24/7. So when I got to Hong Kong, that was my first experience to see televisions.
Wow.
Reportings, their cartoons. It was like totally different than the television that I associated with funeral and dressing in black.
Janice, let me stop you right there and we can continue in a moment. I'm absorbed. So as a first, second, and third grader, you were forced to pick crops. And if you didn't get the crops, you didn't fill a bag, you didn't even go to school. But if you did go to school, you walked an hour and a half uphill. Now, this is the funny part, because we talk about the old people here in the U.S. saying, well, back in our day, we used to walk an hour and a half to school, uphill in snow both ways. You literally walked uphill an hour and a half to school when you got a chance to go.
Yeah, I remember a neighbor, a naughty boy, like to throw stone into the bushes so the snake would come out, and I have to run for life. It wasn't funny. I mean, there was very, very rural area. So, but I am lucky. The turning point for me to come to the United States was because the Tiananmen Square massacre, June 4th, 1989. My best friend is a medical school student, and he worked on the ambulance. He personally carried dozens and dozens of dead bodies and heavily injured students. And that was the turning points to decide to give up everything in Asia and come by myself to the United States. And I landed in Texas, UT Austin, known as the best bargain, high ranking and low tuition and low cost of living, and because it's located in the state capital, so I have a better chance of getting part-time jobs. And also, at the time, I did not have money for any warm clothing, so I could not, even though I was accepted by some of the top school in a cold weather locations, I chose UT Austin. And the mentor at church asked me, what do I want to major? And I said, I don't know. And so Noel said, Janice, since you landed in University of Texas, Austin, you should go for the best. The accounting program is ranked #1 in the nations. And as an international student, you should pass your certified public accounting exam as soon as possible. And the big A accounting firms will line up for you and give you jobs. And then you can change to do anything else you like afterwards. So I follow my mentor's advice, and I work 2 to 3 part-time jobs to finance 75% of my tuitions and room and boards. And so it was very tough, but I am very glad, and I also want to give tribute to Randy and Rhonda Goss. And Randy unfortunately passed away a few months ago, and they were my host family. My first experience in an American home, first Thanksgiving, first Christmas, and I was there when their kids were baptized, and it was. And I was really stunned to see how, at the time, the three kids could almost have an equal votes and can debate in the dining tables, and that's very different than how I grew up under the communist rule.
So let's talk a little bit about your experience coming from communist China in a labor camp to Hong Kong. Was that a shock for you?
Yeah, I was in Hong Kong. At the time, my language proficiency was very low. I mean, when I went to Hong Kong, that's when I started learning was apple, was orange. And then, there was textbooks in English that I spent almost 3 hours every day flipping through dictionaries to get the translation.
Did you grow up speaking Mandarin? Was that?
Yes, so the Chinese only. So I did not know English. And so it was challenging, but I love the British colony. I mean, that was where I get to meet, people from all walks of life. And Hong Kong is kind of a melting pot, lots of tourists, lots of, and also the British law. And I would say I appreciate more later on, because in China, there's no rule of law, but in Hong Kong there is, and at least at the time there was, before 1997, return to China's ownership.
So, okay, coming from Hong Kong then to the great state of Texas, was that another culture shock for you?
Yes, when I came to US, I did not even know the word like buckle up, because I never ride on a private car. It was only like public transportation.
Really? You had never been in a private car?
Until I came to the US. And
How old were you when you came here?
I was 19, and it was and I did not know how to drive. I mean, being first time on a private car, and then eventually I learned to drive, and so that I can take part-time jobs. And my first my first three cars are all under $1,500, and the cheapest one's $450 because I cannot afford.
Right.
And but America is the land of opportunity. So even start from ground zero, not knowing anybody, can only afford to get a car for $450, where at times it broke down, kind of very risky situations. But I was able to have a part-time jobs, professional job as accounting assistant, real estate assistant, and then I also have jobs on campus into my schedules, and I love.
Your job probably here was very easy compared to picking crops in the first, second, and third grade. Was it easy for you to transition into that type of work, or did it feel like you really weren't working at all?
I didn't think much about it at that time. The financial burden was very heavy. Right. It was just like, how am I going to survive? How am I going to pay the tuitions? Because my family could only afford to, for 1 year, and college is 4 years. And so my priority is, how can I graduate as fast as possible so that it costs less, and then get the different jobs that can get me the experience so I can find long-term jobs. I have nothing to fall back. And let me share with you, at the time, I only have enough money to make 3 minutes call every week, because they charge 3 minutes anyway. So my brother on the other side of the phone was counts that have 30 seconds left, 15 seconds left, 9. It was that countdown, and it was just, but every week's call was so precious, and I didn't see my family for years. So,
wow. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to make something very clear if you hadn't picked this up. This young lady came from communist China, worked in a slave labor camp. had the chance to go with her uncle to Hong Kong, saw for the first time some sort of freedom, and then had a chance to come to the U.S. Now here, think about this. This is a first world problem. She could afford a $450 car, barely. We complain if the air conditioner's broke, or if we can't go get it. I don't do Starbucks, I really don't. But if we can't go get our Starbucks, or it's getting expensive, this young lady's experienced communism in a way that we probably can't relate. We think we might understand, but we probably can't relate. And I want to come into that here in a moment, Janice. Also understand that I do kind of relate with how you came into the U.S., because in 1992, I had a chance to hire a Vietnamese immigrant that didn't speak English. I didn't speak Vietnamese, obviously, but we saw him and his wife and his two young children just in awe of everything that was here and available in the U.S. And I did have a chance, Janice. I did have a chance to teach him some English, and he did have a chance to teach me just a little Vietnamese. So I'm going to tell you, thank you, Cảm ơn nhiều lắm, in Vietnamese. So talk to me about, you made it through college. Your degree is, what is your degree?
Master degree in professional accounting, and then bachelor degrees in business. That was my first degree. Later on, I become a Harvard alumni, complete the equivalence of the MBA programs while
Wonderful.
working. Yeah.
So what was your job after your degree? Did you go into certified public accounting? Is that what you did?
I was a financial analyst working in a real estate property company, because my part-time job, one of my part-time job was real estate property management. So I was doing, instead of a smaller scale property management, my first job, financial analyst on high-rise commercial buildings, and I also got my real estate license. And then at the same time, I work with certified public accountants, so that I gain my 1 year of experience in order to get a Texas license. So that was the start. And then on the side, I have my own company doing financial planning.
Did you say on the side?
On the side, yes. I'm used to, like, when I was doing 2-3 jobs, part-time jobs and studying, and because a lot of people like to ask my advice about choosing stock, manage the finance. They just like to talk to me and pick my brain. And I said,
Right.
okay, then I just, as I was getting my CPA license, and I can help people file tax returns, and naturally they want to know where to invest, what to invest, and
Right.
sometimes give more contrary type of ideas. And so at the time, I was given a financial advisor opportunity for one of the big financial firms, but I felt like I did not know enough about executive compensations. I need to understand the pensions, the 401k, and I should learn more. And so one of my clients, by helping him to figure out all the pensions and all the 401k, I interact with the human resources departments. And when there was an opening, they said, Janice, come work for us. You are the first one, non-human resources professional, who actually figure out how it works.
Wow.
So that's how I got into human resources. And then I stay on. And over the past 3 decades, I eventually landed, I have expat assignments before I was 30 years old as a head of operations for 13 countries, as the number 2 in the industries, in the computer business at the time. And then later on, I was vice president for half dozen multi-billion dollars company, most of those Fortune 500 companies.
Janice, it sounds like you've got an incredible work ethic. You're absolutely intelligent, and you've focused on both of those, worked very hard, learned a lot, probably done more than most Americans that were born here. And here's the reason why, and I believe this to be true. I'm 58 years old, Janice. I was born in a time when we would walk out the door when I was little and just breathe in freedom. It was the United States of America. I worked hard for Americans. I didn't work at your level, but I worked hard. My father had a body shop. I was working on cars when I was 8 years old. I learned how to work. But I don't think I could ever use that phrase that I was a good worker or had learned how to work at a young age after talking to you, because I had no clue what it meant to work the kind of work that you did as a child, and then have that same work ethic came with you when you came into America. So let me congratulate you on not being a victim, but being a victor. And I'm proud of you for what you've done. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn. And I hope that, in fact, recently I spoke at a women conference. I want to encourage, other girls and ladies and women, there's like abundance of opportunities. So don't underestimate oneself. This is the land of opportunity. Just need to work hard. And I will share a few tidbits, maybe. I would say being considerate, always think of others first, and willing to travel the extra miles, be resourceful. I often have more people knock at my door, want to pick my brain, because I tend to come up with more creative, innovative solutions that they not anticipate, and always be helpful. So what goes around comes around, and I have no expectation, but a lot of opportunity came to me because of the referrals. Others were watching, observing me while just like doing my work, and yeah.
Well, I appreciate the advice, and it's great advice. We're humans. A lot of times we tend to be selfish naturally, and it takes a little bit of a push or an observation to realize that, you know what? Yeah, we need to put other people before ourselves, and that's just the way God works. God Himself says, "Do unto others as you'd have done unto you." That's very biblical. So thank you for those words of advice. Let's move on a little bit, and I want to get into the things that we have you on here to talk about. Janice, you came from the CCP, you came from communism, you've seen it. You went to Hong Kong, you saw a form of freedom. Came to the U.S., you've observed freedom. You've taken part in that, and you've actually been a key developer in getting that freedom and the news and the words of freedom out. Talk to me about what you see taking place right now, Janice. Tell me about your thoughts on what's going on in this country.
Unfortunately, since the COVID lockdown, you see censorships so obvious, right? People cannot go to church. How come people can go to certain type of big box retailers but cannot go to church? So I see that the freedom is being taken away. And I see that, statues being destroyed, and a lot of organized protests, not organic protests. There must be someone behind that. And almost like a relief of the Cultural Revolutions. So the Cultural Revolution is based on struggle. It's power struggle, but they're trying to put people to fight against each other and to create chaos, because communism survive through chaos. If you look at the decades of communist rule, first they mobilize the farmers to they promise that will redistribute the land they obtain from the landlords, but the Communist Party never redistribute the land to the farmers, the revolutionaries. They actually confiscated in their hands. And then 1966 to 76, 10 years Cultural Revolution. So educated people, everybody, most people on the audience would not have able to escape communism, the persecutions. Just because you're educated, you get persecuted because they want to silence you. Then 1989, the Tiananmen Square massacre, the students have no weapons, but they were crushed, they were killed. At the same time, 1899, that's when Berlin Wall came down, that's where the Red Curtain came down in Eastern Europe, changes in Eastern Europe and Russia. China was presented the same opportunity, but instead they rolled out the tank. And then 1999, the start of the persecution of Falun Gong, which based on truthfulness, compassion, forbearance, 3 universal principles. And Falun Gong practitioner, they do 5 sets of gentle Tai Chi type of exercise and meditations with tremendous health benefits. What does the Chinese Communist Party see? Falun Gong practitioners do not drink, do not smoke. They're disciplined life and they do exercise every day. They're known as the most healthy, the healthiest people in China. So in organ transplants, no one wants a smoker's lung, an alcoholic person's liver or kidney. So they target the Falun Gong practitioners. They can get them from the school, from the workplace, from the home, if there is a match blood type and tissue types. So it's like killing on demand for organs. If you take the different body parts, including the skins, the corneas, the heart, lung, and all those, I personally have seen screenshots of the different transplant centers in China with a price tag, promise, 6 to 8 weeks in match organs. My husband and I attended the World Transplant Congress in summer 2006. In fact, we were at the first press conference on April 26 in the Farragut Square, near the White House, and where Annie, the first whistleblower, and then Peters, the other whistleblower. So Annie was a nurse, and her husband was a surgeon. They work in the Sujiatun in Northeast China. And Annie is a Christian, and she spoke up to expose that people being killed on demand in the hospitals that she and her ex-husband work, because she knew underground the hospitals there were thousands of Falun Gong detainees waiting to be slaughtered on demand with the matched blood type, tissue type. And her best friend, who's an accountant in the same hospital, also told her that all of a sudden the hospital ordered a lot of type of drugs that was related to transplants. And so she spoke up because she's Christian, and she hoped this may reduce the sin of her ex-husbands. And when I went to the World Transplant Congress in summer 2006, I ran into transplant surgeons around the world. One of them is Dr. Wei Liu from Tianjin Oriental Transplant Center. I asked Dr. Liu, I said, what's your specialty? He said, liver. I said, how many liver transplants you have done personally? Over 2,000. I have no idea how many. So I went around and asked transplant experts from Europe, from Canada, from different countries, and no countries have that many. And then the next day, I saw the Chinese transplant surgeon disappear, and I sat next to a researcher from Hamburg University who's Chinese, and I said, where did those transplant surgeons go? Last night they were all at the reception. Oh, they were picked up by the pharmaceutical companies to Disney, to Hawaii. And I said, why are you here? Still here? So, oh, I have a poster presentation. I asked him, this researcher, I said, where's the organ source? So he told me, you go outside the Boston Convention Center. He said you get your answer by walking out to the main entrance. So I went out, and I saw screen prints of the different transplant centers. I saw the price tags for the different organs and the matching blood type, tissue types. And so my husband and I work on this to trying to stop forced organ harvesting for the past 2 decades on a pro bono basis. And my husband is a physician, Caucasian, and he felt like medical ethics is totally breached. People are being killed on demand. And the dangerous part is if Communist Party will kill people on demand for organs, they would not respect the life of the organ recipients, the patients, because they are about making money. So they may give you a mismatched organs take your money, and then afterwards you won't survive long. So this is a huge risk. For the audience, you have a chance to help stop the forced organ harvesting by asking your U.S. senator to co-sponsor Senate Bill 817. Senate Bill 817 initiated by Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Rob Johnson, Senator Rick Scott, and half dozen other senators. And the Bill 817 asked the State Departments to report on this practice, which Secretary Rubio is ready and willing to do that, because when he was senator, he actually initiated the bill, and and also impose sanctions on anybody involved in the forced organ harvesting. So it's about saving lives, and all of us have a chance. I mean, yesterday was the remembrance of the Holocaust, and we say never again, but this is happening. It's similar to killing of the Jews and putting into the chambers and doing all the testing, and now killing people on demand for organs is happening. And Xi Jinping actually talked about it. Remember the hot mice situation in the beginning of September, during the military parade, Xi Jinping talked to Putin about 150 years. How do you achieve living 150 years? By keep changing organs.
See, Janice, my question was a little bit probing. I wanted to talk about the CCP and the communism that you saw and how you see it coming here, but I didn't expect that answer. So you're talking to me about almost organs on demand that's happening there, which is crazy. Organs on demand, which means their people are really cattle. They're not people in their eyes. And it's happening right here, or it's happening right now in this world, but y'all, it's happening right here too. Yes. I've got many friends in this world, and one of my friends was on my show last week or the week before, maybe the week before, and his name is Craig Sawyer. And Craig is a Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 6, rescuing children from child sex trafficking. Ladies and gentlemen, there's 350,000 children that disappear from every year in this United States. They just go away. You don't find them walking down the street somewhere and say, oh, we found one. They just disappear. Here's what they're used for. They're used for sex trafficking. They're used for labor, and they're used for organ harvesting. The same thing that's happening in China openly, where it can be seen, is happening discreetly and hidden here in this United States of America. And one of the things that we need to worry about is, can it eventually become out in the open? I don't know. I can't imagine that it's in the open in China. But if it can happen there, it can happen here. Do you agree?
It's the CCP used the secret police stations outside China as in coordinations of that. And I have met people in United States who have direct knowledge of the, including people in the Flight Attendant Association who have seen trafficking. They know those people were unwillingly on the planes. And I also have met with people from hospitals in the Latin Americas. They brag about, the state of art equipment. They do transplant, how many transplant numbers they can do. And in particular, say, think of like heart transplants. You cannot predict somebody with the blood type and tissue type match, and heart after a few hours, from dying, it's not usable. It's not like you can refrigerate a heart and use it later. So when they can do those transplant in scale, there is almost like taking medicines as assembly line. And part of what China, the Communist China does to Falun Gong practitioners is using the organ harvestings as an instruments of persecutions, the unprecedented evils on humanities. And for Americans, we have to be careful, because when post-transplant, say there are many Americans who went to China to get a transplant, and I've met a lot of transplant surgeons in the US have cared for them afterwards, because once you have the transplant, you need the medication for the rest of your life. And so it is putting our medical staff and doctors and nurses at risk, because when they do transplant on a profit basis, you do not know, if they are contagious disease, if there are other issues, because there are no real records. Everything is like fake. But the most important, is about transparency. It's about information flow. Why China is able to do that for so long, 2 decades, because of the information censorship. And the information censorship, unfortunately, have been promulgated by some of the big techs, where the censorship of informations. I recently talked to Yako. His sister was human trafficked for 6 years and eventually released. And so he has been doing counseling for other victims of human trafficking. And even though when they release, they were very afraid because they can be tracked again. So I want to point out the information. A lot of us use phone. Phone has a location tracking, and that's very vulnerable, and phone is very easy to hack. And that's why I would like to introduce SafeMeet. SafeMeet is the tool that SafeMeet, and SafeMeet is a tool that does not use phone number. All you need is just a email to register, to verify that it's not a bot, and then also inform you with any updates. And SafeMeet is a very easy to use. What it does is it combines phone call, file sharing, video conferencing, and also texting all in one app. So a lot of vulnerabilities, you jump from one tool to another, but when you have one tool. And the encryption technology is the true end-to-end encryptions, which requires only, and the way it designed is only the user has the information on the user device, meaning no one else. SafeMeet cannot access your content, and there's no backdoor. There's never a file or content sent somewhere else. You may have seen the latest litigation that Bloomberg just reported about the breach in Safe Chats, the breach in WhatsApp, where information shows that, how come someone unable to use those files, in the litigation? So because there is a backdoor, there's a way redirect. So people have the false impression that it's a true-to-true encryption. It's not. But SafeMeet is a true end-to-end encryption. And that is very, very important. It also does not use cell phone tower, because it does not use phone. So a lot of the cybersecurity hackings could hack into the cellular companies, their routers, because a lot of the infrastructure could be outdated. So they could just attack at the equipment basis.
Let's talk about that in just a moment. On SafeMeet, I want to hear a little bit more. I also want to talk about the war on information. You mentioned earlier that you saw some big changes take place during COVID. I call COVID the biggest test of obedience that the world has ever seen. Mm-hmm. They just tested the population over and over. You must stay 6 foot apart. It's for the greater good. You must wear a mask. It's for the greater good. You must not go see your grandma. It's for the greater good. It was just a test, continuous test to see how far they could push us. And that's when we really started paying attention to the propaganda that was being pushed and the information that was being controlled. And I want to come to that in just a moment, Janice. I want to take a real quick break and talk about my mission and what we're doing and why I'm even here. God's called me to do some things as well. We're going to take a real quick 1.5-minute break. I'd like to show a little video, and then when we come back, I'd like for us to chat about the information war and how SafeMeet is going to help beat that. Is that okay with you?
Certainly. Thank you.
Hang on tight, guys. I want you to take a look at this.
So I had a 60 millimeter mortar that landed 3 feet in front of me. And so it didn't cook off. And so it technically, they would consider it to be a dud, but it wasn't a dud. It had a broken propeller on it. I got pictures of it. I carry with me and stuff. It's about the size of a 1.5 liter bottle. But it has kill radius about 25 meters, 20 to 25 meters. So basically, if that round would have went off, then confirmed dead would have been 20 to 25 meters. Been 31 months since I've been able to stand on even with a brace, or being able to take one single step. So it's been 31 months to the day yesterday.
And then God leaned in and he said, you know what? You're going to do a foundation. You're going to be the one to help these boys, and some girls, I'm sure, get to walking again, back on their feet.
It became so real when we physically came here and I physically got to see face to face to that unit. And knowing that, I mean, like I said, it's pretty much like an avatar. I mean, I felt like I, plugged in and we became one, like I was breathing with it, like, I mean, it just incredible. I mean, I can't even imagine, I can't even describe the feeling that I have, but like, it was like deep down inside of me, it's like, you know what, I felt like I can fight again. I really am able to stand again, and I'm like, I can do this.
Like, I guess the sense of pride, like to stand tall, no matter what height you are, not a jab at Glenn, but just to stand, I think is huge. You take it for granted.
Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Joshua and Crystal Holm. They become great friends. And we've had the opportunity to take them to New York in July and get them into a clinical trial where Joshua, you just saw, took his first steps in 3 years, had a chance to walk over and hug his wife. He's paralyzed from the chest down. Short of some miracle, he'll never walk on his own again. But we're going to have an opportunity now to go to Dallas in February. And he's going to be trained on the take-home model and going to be the guinea pig while they're going through FDA approval. And we are relaunching that fundraiser. So if you have an opportunity and you have a few extra bucks, just go to givesendgo.com/finish this fight and help us to help him. And he's just the first. From this point out, we have 100 exoskeletons that we want to give to our veterans over the course of the next 18 months. It's a lot of money. It takes a lot of effort. So givesendgo.com/finish this fight. And I appreciate y'all taking care of that and doing that. You've always been helpful, and I thank you for that. So Miss Janice, thank you for taking a few minutes with me there. He's the reason, and this mission is the reason that I even do what I do in the podcast world. Because we've got to help our fellow Americans. We've got to help our fellow humans. And I think you're doing a lot of that with this SafeMeet. Let's talk a little bit more deeply about what's going on in our world right now when it comes to information control. And there's even things that are coming down the pipeline. It's in China right now, called a social credit score.
Yes.
Let's chat about that a little bit, Janice.
Yeah. So in China, there is the Great Firewall. So the Great Firewall is not only blocks the codes, the websites, but it blocks the truth. So if you type Jiang Zemin in China in a search engine, you have 0 searches. How could that be possible to have 0 searches? The former head of the Communist Party, the head of the states, the head of the military, because they have not figured out an algorithm to only produce good news. So there's 0 searches. If you type Falun Gong, it redirect you to an anti-Falun Gong website. So behind the firewall, the Chinese people cannot hear the cries of the persecuted, the words of the Gospels, or even the voices of their brothers and sisters around the world who speak out in solidarity with them. The war divides humanities. The war really becomes the nervous system of the tyranny, a structure that protects lives and punishes the curiosity. It's not a monument to the strength of a civilization, but it's really a sign of the fragility of the rulers. It's the reflex fear of their own people. And why does it matter what happened in China to us? Because we do not have boots on the ground in China. So only engage with the leader is insufficient. You have billion plus people and only a few leaders, and the leaders come and go. And you saw the vice chair of the militaries had been purged. And so it's like out of the 7 highest military powers, only 2 left. 5 had disappears, purged. And so leaders come and go. You will not know how long she have limited times. So engagements need to go deeper into the Chinese people. And the connection with that is very important. What do Chinese people want? They want the freedom that America has. They've been sending the children to be educated in the US. They may even send the wives to get the residency here. They want the freedom that you and I all enjoy here in America.
Well, Janice, I think the entire world wants the freedom that the United States has been the bastion of freedom for many years. What concerns me is we're heading in their direction instead of them heading in our direction. We're seeing our freedoms start to be trampled on. We saw that through COVID. We mentioned that just a few minutes ago. And CJ responded with, he was so disappointed with the human race during COVID. And I was as well. I'm going to be honest with you. I was as well. I remember when it took place. I remember my first scheduled concert. I came back to music at 52 years old after being gone for 19 years. My first scheduled concert was March 28th of 2020. March the 23rd, the world stopped. Fort Lauderdale shut the doors. And in my mind, Janice, I'm thinking, America won't put up with that. 2 weeks, maybe a month, and it'll be over. It's still ongoing. Now, not to the level that it was in 2020 and 21, but it's still ongoing. What's it going to take in the U.S. for us to realize we're not invulnerable? We can be compromised. This freedom can go away. You've seen it on your side. You see it happening right now. And the same thing, I believe, maybe not the same firewall, but the same thing is taking place in Iran right now. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So if you look at Iran, right before they started killing people, what do? They cut off internet. They cut off cell phones because information is the crucial element for freedoms. When information flow are disrupted, being taken away, that's very risky. And so having the information freedoms is critical to religious freedoms. And we all believe that we're created by the creators. And if we don't have the information free flows, people cannot make informed decisions. Business cannot make informed decisions. And so it's really a global threat. China has used many tools, whether it's TikTok, whether it's their WeChat, a lot of the cyber tools that they use to spread the propaganda on American soil. So let me give you examples. The transnational repressions, specifically ordered by Xi Jinping since October 2022, was to export their repressions spread globally through subversion, deception, unrestricted warfare, and the erosion of moral and religious traditional boards. CCP used propaganda, misinformation, disinformation, and they amplify through online campaigns, through some of the influencers, and even contaminated the Hollywood films. And as you know, many of the even the cinemas were owned by Chinese, and so they dictate what type of films, and they force the filmmakers to remove, so-called sensitive information and the legacy media. To give you an example, New York Times reporter Nicole Hong published over 10 articles in an 8-month period of time attacking Shen Yun. Shen Yun is the world's premier classical Chinese dance with a live orchestra, displaying 5,000 years of civilization and traditional cultures. What Nicole Hong failed to disclose is his father, George Hong, works for United Front. United Front is the Chinese Communist Party's spy organization overseas. And Nicole Hong's New York Times articles were artificially amplified by thousands and tens of thousands of inauthentic social media accounts to make those articles the most read during election year 2024. We know that could not be possible. That could not be the most read article, but this is to create the impressions. And why do they do that? Because they don't want people to come see Shen Yun in the theater, because Shen Yun shows China before communism. Shen Yun is a US company based in New York, and fastest growing US performing companies with 8 touring companies that reaching 200 cities, 20 countries, inspire over 10 million audience. So if you have not seen it, so beautiful and so inspiring that you may feel the connection with the divine. China was once known as the land of the divine. It was under the communist rule that they tried to eradicate any traditions. And actually, tradition is kind of the stepping stones for people to get back to divinities, to look for the roots, to look for higher levels, the spiritualities. And what we need to do is to stop the silence. It's not because too many actors out there, it's because too many people are silent. When they see something, they are silent, they don't speak up. And so those actors will use the pressures, use the disinformation, misinformations, and to create fear. And when people live under fear, and we do have opportunity, we can ask President Trump to demand President Xi to tear down the Great Firewall. Because the Great Five distorts market, manipulates information, and enables cyber warfare and propaganda against free societies. It's really just shielding the Communist parties from moral accountabilities. And as we know, they have exported their influence into university, into media, into corporations. And we know freedom cannot coexist indefinitely with such a fortress of controls. And we know when President Trump speaks up, the persecuted will listen with hopes, not only in China, but around the world. The Great China Firewall does not only block codes, it blocks solidarity, it actually cuts humanity off from itself. So only moral leadership can reopen the channels that make mankind flourish again. So the call for the fall of the firewall is not an act of aggression, it's an act of hope. Just like the Berlin Wall came down, we can ask them to take down the firewall. And so people informed decisions and to restore the free exchange of ideas. And so brothers and sisters around the world can be connected. We can stand in solidarities, and we also make informed decisions at every level. Many people think, well, China is so far away. You may not know that your 401k money, even your 403 money, possibly directly and indirectly invest in China one way or another. And our supply chains, many things that you mentioned about body shops and mechanics, parts, some parts, maybe a school make in China, but if there's a shortage of those components, the car have to take on and off the assembly line. So we are living in such an interconnected world. For freedom, for truth, and for the persecuted, we shall not be silent.
Janice, you made some, and I appreciate all of the statements. I appreciate everything that you said. You made some statements that have got a very strong parallel, though, to the U.S. and what we're going through. And I'm not sure if you're familiar, a lot of people are not, with the Smith-Mundt Act. So this law was written into law, I can't remember the exact year, but it was in the 40s, where it was illegal for media to be used as propaganda against its citizens in the United States. We didn't have to worry about that. When it was on the news, it was as much truth as they could tell us, or if it wasn't truth, it was not on purpose. In 2014, President Obama repealed that part of the Smith-Mundt Act, and it's now legal for our country, United States of America, to use propaganda against its citizens. So when President Trump talks about fake news, and that what he's saying is you need to be careful what you hear and what's being told to you through the news, because now it may not necessarily be news. It is legal for propaganda to be used against us. What you're talking about, Miss Janice, is the same thing that China was using against its people, is repealing history and taking and using propaganda to hide and reform its subjects' thought patterns. The same thing has happened here. Are you aware of the Smith-Mundt Act?
Yes, and it's very sad that right now the big tech, because they almost have the free hand to do things. I mean, they suppress. And let me give you an example. Epoch Times and NDD TV, we publish in 23 languages, 35 countries. Every day we reach, over 5 million people, between the subscription or newsletter, so on and so forth. And we've been demonetized. For example, our programs like the Facts Matters, the American Thought Leaders, and Crossroads are flagship programs on YouTube. It's broadcast, there were ads inserted by Google's, but we do not get the money for it. So demonetized is trying to make us not grow. And even Facebook's for, NDTV has as much as 60 million followers. And then they stop taking advertisements from us because they don't want us to grow. We were growing like 17,000 new subscribers per month. And so we have to be aware of, there are tools out there, there are companies out there that not truly stand up for freedoms, not truly enable American companies, both Epoch Times and NDTV are American companies, nonprofits, and we focus on truth, tradition, and hope. Our journalists have been experienced a lot of threats, and even me personally have experienced the death threats and multiple attempts in trying to attack me. And but that will not silence me. It's actually make me even speak up more frequently and bolder, because evils need to be exposed. The truth need to be told. And so for those who have not yet subscribe to theepochtimes.com and ntd.com, and you can always rely on us with firsthand, timely, truthful reporting.
Let me brag on NTD real quickly. I have been featured on your News Source show a few times. Very fair reporting, very truthful. There was nothing that we talked about that was manipulated or edited or anything. It just was what it was. And NTD is doing a great job. And obviously Epoch Times, I've known about them for a long time, doing great work. Y'all, there are very few organizations like NTD and Epoch Times out there. There's a few, but very few. And if you know the truth amounts to this, that 90+%, and I've heard it said 92, maybe 96, not sure the exact number, but let's call it 92 even, percent of media is owned by 6 corporations. And it's people like BlackRock and State Street and those kind of people who, oh, by the way, they own each other. So they're all intermingled, and they're the ones that are controlling the flow of information and what's actually out there. Here's how you know that. When you see 5, 10, 20, 30 news sources on the same day come out with the same talking line, word for word for word. That's not happening on NTD. That's not happening in Epoch Times. Y'all go to these websites. Epoch Times is at .com, I think, epochtimes.com. And NTD, what is the website?
At ntd.com and theepochtimes.com. And because we are nonprofits and our funding is really from the subscription, so we only answer to the subscribers. We are not manipulated. So we cannot be controlled or manipulated by the billionaires or by big corporations, because we stand up tall, stand up for the truth, because everyone deserves to know the truth, and truth will survive.
Well, here's what it takes. It takes for people to stand up and say something. It takes people to stand up and do something. I am seeing more of that today than I saw 4 years ago. I'm seeing way more of it today than I saw 7 years ago. Thank you, people that are watching, for taking a stand and doing something. And people say, well, Glenn, what can I do? I don't know, honestly, what you can do. I don't know. I didn't know what I could do. I'm going to tell you, a year and a half ago, I wrote a song, and I thought that's all this was going to be. And now God has turned this into a movie. He's turned it into a podcast. He's turned it into a foundation. What God is looking for in people is the willingness to say, here I am. Send me. Let me do it. And that's how we win. That's how we get to make sure that our freedoms are not taken away, that we don't end up like communist China 10, 20, 30 years, 50 years down the road, whatever that is. Well, Glenn, that can't happen. Oh, really? Take a look at Venezuela. Beautiful country. At one point was in the top 5 in the world economically. And look where it's at today. It can happen here, but it won't happen if we take a stand. Talk to me. We had a few more moments left. Janice, SafeMeet.us. How can folks get involved with that? How can they take part in that?
Yes, SafeMeet.us. You can go to Apple Store, or if you have Android, you also can download too. And it's very easy. It's free. And what it does is the encryption technology is true end-to-end encryption. The same encryption technology used by Department of Defense in Germany, by NATO, by NASA, by French Interior Departments. What separates SafeMeet and the rest of the tools out there is because we have our own ecosystems, and so it does not rely on the the clouds, the big tech, which is very vulnerable for cybersecurity attack. And also the design of it is like the encryption is created frame by frame, real times. So no one ever have access to your content except yourself, because the design is like only the user on the local device have the access. And it's something that we really should have an alternative. Think of like you want your banking information, your health records to be safe. You want to communicate to your friends and family in a safe space, and you want to communicate to the world. But this is the one that will not be influenced, attacked by the big tech or by certain totalitarian regimes. And by using SafeMeet, you actually ensure your own safety, and you're also helping others in other closed societies, because we want a tool for humanities. To me, this is the gift, is the most innovative design, and it's working beautifully, very high qualities of the video conferencing, and you could have thousands of people. And for more secure meeting, you can choose whether meeting by meeting, you can choose whether you admit each attendees, and it actually solve the problems. Most of you know about the Signal scandals, because someone else was added and not knowing who, because it's just only the phone numbers could be added, could be any name, right? And also when you have phone number, actually they have the directory who's on your contact. SafeMeet solve that problems. Never ask your phone numbers, and you can even have a separate email just for SafeMeets, for communication and all that. So it's very secure, and it's very easy to use, and it's really about phone call, chatting, texting, file sharings, and video conferencing, everything in one tool. SafeMeet, SafeMeet.
That's outstanding. And Janice, we hear about breaches almost on a daily basis now, if not a weekly basis for sure. So you're telling me that you have your own storage, your own facilities. You don't outsource to people like Google that are huge. You don't outsource to cloud software that's already out there. It's your own ecosystem, correct?
Absolutely, because the big tech It's very vulnerable. So if you think of capital ones, 100 millions, data points for the customers being taken. And if you experience even with people use a Signal, they were impacted by the AWS outage. When they're outage, oftentimes it's a cyber attack. They may or may not say, but the CEO of Signal admitted they were impacted. So because the cyber attack can attack at the big cloud, big tech level. So SafeMeet use its own ecosystems from the virtual private servers to data centers and everything, its own ecosystem. And in fact, their performance by independent evaluations, those servers and data center have exceeded, the big tech. And it's something that created by US citizens who treasure the freedoms and want to protect the freedoms and want to give an alternatives compared to the others, because all the other tools, most of the tools use phone number because they want your locations, they want to monetize. Our goal is not about monetization, it's about true freedom and privacy that everybody deserve. And if you look at their court records that show the text information from Signal, for example, you will wonder, how come? If the text information can be exposed through litigation, that means somebody able to get to that content. And this never happened with SafeMeet. And the most recent one, as I mentioned in the beginning of the programs, that Bloomberg has recently published, through the litigations, you see that there's a backdoor, WhatsApp claimed a backdoor, there could be a backdoor weight. And so some of those, most of the Microsoft Teams, Zoom, or Google Meets, the standard security settings does not have the true end-to-end encryptions, but SafeMeet has. And the way in encryption is frame by frame and it's real times, and only the user have access. So even SafeMeet staff have no access to it. And even governments trying to get to it because government cannot have that local key. SafeMeet does not have that local key, and it does not use cell phone tower. So cell phone even get the metadata, they cannot decode it. So this is a truly safe. That's called SafeMeet.
That's really awesome. See, the government can't subpoena SafeMeet to take it if they don't have any way to get it. That's the only way we're going to be secure. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your front line of defense against what's going on. We were raised to get a social security number that's part of your identification, but keep it quiet. You don't want people to know it. I'm going to tell you right now, your social security number is known by way more people already than what you have any idea. It's out there. This is our first line of defense, SafeMeet.us. I'm going to get signed up when we get off here today because I've been breached. I know I've been breached, and there's some things that are going on I don't want anybody else to have access to and to know. So, Janice, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you to the Epoch Times, and thank you to NTD for the media work that they're doing. I'd ask you just to stay on for a moment so we can chat on the backside, and we're going to move on. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Glenn Baker. This is the Finish This Fight Hour. I thank you for joining us. We had a pretty good turnout today. Do me a favor. Push this thing out. People need to know about this. Share this podcast to everybody. Share it on every platform you've got. They may shut it down. They may not. They don't like me in some instances. Some instances they do. But share it. Let's get this information out and go to SafeMeet.us. Get signed up for it. You need to protect it. This is one of the ways to get started in doing this. Your first line of defense. Janice Trey, thank you so much for joining us. Have you got any final words before we sign off?
Well, thank you, Glenn, for having me. And I want to say, God bless you. Bless all who walk the path of truth, compassion, and forbearance, and bless the United States of America. And be safe and use SafeMeet. And also, don't be silent. Evil is afraid of people speaking up. And for all of us, by joining hands, we can face down the evil, because courage is stronger than the brutality, and courage can be contagious. So let's all have the courage, and together we can accelerate the fall of communism. We can dismantle censorship and reclaim humanity's sacred connections to the divine.
Great words of wisdom and great advice. Ladies and gentlemen, join us next week on Tuesday. I have Chris Bish and dadgum Tim Dillard. We're going to be on again. We got some stuff to talk about. I've got another surprise guest. I can't reveal just yet, but we're getting ready to expose some big corruption in Texas. Y'all hang tight and come see me again, 3 p.m. Eastern next Tuesday for the Finish This Fight Hour. And just like always, remember this, Uncle Glenn loves you, and I'll see you on the other side.
Forward, halt, left, 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 right, your left, 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 right. Down,
Arkansas boy with a lifelong plan took the oath like his old man, then turned around proud and shook his hand. L.A. kid stood right behind, took a deep breath and signed on the line, while tears streamed from